Welcome to the program. I'm Lana Kay. Did you know that our Boone County is the home of a Medal of Honor recipient? Well, it's true. And he lived in the small river town of Petersburg, Kentucky, and his name was Charles Clinton Fleek, better known as Chalkie to his friends and neighbors. So today with me, I have Senator John Schickel with us, and I'm so glad that he could come out and be here. And we're going to discuss Charles Clinton Fleek, better known as Chalkie. We'll refer to him as Chalkie today. And Senator Schickel had a lot to do with a beautiful dedication for Chalkie and tribute in his hometown of Petersburg, Kentucky. That was held on August 17th of this year. Senator Schickel pretty much emceed it. And so, Senator, how did you become involved in that great feat that you did for Chalkie?
Well, thank you, Lana. It's great to be here and talk about it with you. It all started, I've been in Boone County for a long time. I first moved here in 1977 as a young man, and I always heard about Charles Chalkie Fleek, the Medal of Honor winner. There's a bust of him in our courthouse, and the ribbon, the Medal of Honor is on display at the Boone County Courthouse. But I never really realized, like so many Boone Countyans, I guess, how significant it was. And but after I was elected state senator, I had several citizens from Petersburg over the years come to me, and they said, we need to do something to honor this young man from this small town. And Lynn, if you've ever been to Petersburg, I know you have, but some of our viewers may have not, because we think of Boone County now with all this growth and Florence and Union and Hebron and Burlington, and but there's another side to Boone County.
That's it.
And that's down on the river. We call it Western Boone County, and it's still very rural.
Yes.
And this little, I call it hamlet of Petersburg, is really just the way it was 40 years ago.
Good description.
In fact, it's probably lost population during those times. So it's almost a time capsule. Well, anyway, I had several citizens come to me and said, John, we need to do something.
And let's name those two, because Terry Edwards and Daryl Buckler had a lot to do with this. They're veterans themselves, and didn't they, and them and some others, I'm sure. But we do want to remember Terry and Daryl.
Yes, they were very significant in this, and they and others came to me and said, we need to do something to honor Chalkie or Charlie Fleek for this feat. He's the only Medal of Honor winner from Boone County in the history of the country, in the history of the country. So this is very significant. And but what I did, I decided the best thing to do would be to name the road, the main state highway that goes through that little hamlet there.
20.
Yeah, Kentucky 20, and call that the Charles Chalkie Fleek Memorial Highway. So I introduced legislation in the last session to do that, and it passed unanimously. And so what we had on that day was the dedication ceremony to designate it the Charles Fleek Memorial Highway. Now, the county also cooperated. Judge Gary Moore in the fiscal court, they were very much involved in this, as were many others. And they decided also to have a sign that designated that town, a sign right when you come into town, that this was the hometown of this great hero, Charles Fleek. Mm-hmm. But what was so great for me and so fulfilling to me is I decided, Atlanta, to go and to learn a little bit about this man, a little bit about his family. So on 2 different occasions, I went down to Petersburg and visited with people who had known Charles personally. And also, the Boone County Library historical person at the Boone County Library was a great help in getting all the newspaper articles and everything from that era. And I was just blown away, Lana, with the story of this young man, because the story of this young man, it probably wasn't very unique. It probably was something a lot of families went through at that time in rural America. And when you look at the statistics of the Vietnam War, where thousands of men were killed, and really of all our wars, the majority of the casualties came from these small
little towns.
Little towns. Those were the fellows who signed up in great numbers. Now, Chalkie was actually drafted, but when he got his draft notice, then he went and enlisted.
Right.
You know, he came from, I studied his dad. His dad's name was Woodford.
Wilford.
Wilford.
I think.
Yeah, thank you for that correcting me. And his mother and his two brothers and his baby sister Carla. Talked to his brothers, talked to Carla, who's now a grown woman, talked to the fire chief in the town there where he was a fireman before he left, went and saw the little house he grew up in, right there in downtown Petersburg, the First Baptist Church where he worshiped. The family was, a couple of things come through loud and clearly and about this family as I got to visit them and know their neighbors. Number one, very humble, very humble and not a lot of material things. Dad worked at a casket company over in Indiana, and took the ferry to get over there every day. Chalkie worked at Seagram's. Chalkie left high school. He left. He only had
I think in his freshman year.
Freshman year. There was one picture of him at Boone County High School. He left school to help support the family. There's quotes from Mom when they found out that their dear son was killed. Her saying how much she believed in the Lord and how much this was in the Lord's hands. I went back and read all the newspaper articles at the time. Talked to the undertaker from Bullock Funeral Home up in Hebron. Talked to the undertaker's son, who was 11 years old at the time, who remembers coming down the steps into the living room where the casket was and seeing that closed casket there, and his dad explaining to him what had happened. So it just brought back, Lynn, at that time to me so vividly. And but besides humble beginnings, the other things that I saw was a sense of shared sacrifice of that family. That family, by today's standards, did not have much at all, but they gave so much, and how heartbroken they must have been, but how graciously they accepted
they accepted
it's just a true American story that was really brought home to me, Lena, by doing the research for that cemetery, for that ceremony.
You did a great job. Now, I also researched some Senator, and much of the information regarding Charles Chalkie was gained for me from his cousin Ron Fleek, who told me that while their fathers were brothers, that he and Chalkie were more raised as brothers. Ron was stationed at the time in Germany and was given leave to fly to California and accompany his cousin/brother's body back home after the death. So the last time that Ron saw Chalkie, going back to your point of how religious and what a nice family they were, they left Fort Benning. They were leaving Fort Benning, and they attended church together and had a hamburger, and Ron left for Germany and Chalkie for Vietnam. And of course, that was the last time that Ron was with Chalkie. And you know, a lot of guys out now, they're away from home. They would have had a sandwich and a
bar
beer.
Somewhere.
They'd have had a sandwich and a beer. But no, these two went to church and then said their goodbyes. So I want to read, and I want Senator to tell us what Chalkie did. But here's a portion of a letter that Chalkie sent home. And it is, "We have seen a lot of firefighting. I pray this war will be over soon." But unfortunately for Chalkie, it wasn't. So then what happened? How did Chalkie lose his life, Senator?
Well, you know, I learned something new about it just last night when I was on the internet preparing for this interview. But he was leading a squadron of men, and they came across a superior enemy force, a large enemy force, and they were in a fierce firefight. And someone threw a grenade. The enemy threw a grenade into the men, and Chalkie threw himself on the grenade. He didn't have time to warn the men, so he threw himself on the grenade, absorbing the blast. And that's how he died. I read on the internet, just last night on his I never can say that word right. Wikipedia page, or what's it called?
Wikipedia, I think.
Yeah, Wikipedia. That it said he actually scooped it up in his helmet. He actually scooped it up in his helmet, and then the blast went off, and it killed him. Yeah, and it killed him. His commanding officer, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Irvin, was actually not there when that happened, but he heard about it, and he recommended the Medal of Honor, and as you know, he came to the service.
Yes, he did. And the Medal of Honor, just in case, just a little history lesson here, is the highest and most prestigious military decoration for valor in action against an enemy force. So it began in the Civil War, and it has been awarded all through our wars. It's the highest medal that can be given out. Many people call it the Presidential Medal of Honor. I've heard it the Congressional. Most people, because it's a congressional appointment. Am I right? So tell us how that goes, Senator.
Well, and I learned a lot about this through Lieutenant Colonel Charles Irvin, who was his commanding officer, came up from Florida to attend it.
Flew from Jacksonville.
Yeah, who came up to attend it. And there's a process that they must go through where I believe it's 6 people have to verify. They have to go and interview up to 6 people who have to be eyewitnesses of what happened. And there's a long process, and it goes all the way to the President of the Congress and the President of the United States to get this honor approved. And it's like you said, it's the highest honor. I want to just comment a minute on Ron Fleek that you brought up before, because he was just a total inspiration to me too, the cousin. Ron Fleek still works for Boone County.
Yes.
And
Parks Department.
Yeah, and as you may know, before I had this job, before I was state senator, I was Boone County jailer for a long time.
Right.
And we used to take out prisoner work crews. Ron Fleek ran a prisoner work crew for me for years, took out prisoners. I talked to Ron, knew Ron. He never mentioned this to me. I didn't even make the connection with
that
Charlie, was a cousin, until this road naming, and I had known Ron for years. And then after that, I too talked to Ron, and the story, as you know, he's a very, very shy person.
Yes, he is.
But when you're with him one-on-one, he really shares, and he told me the exact same story about them attending church together, their childhood in Petersburg, and it was just truly, truly, truly an inspiration to hear and how he accompanied the body. And then after he accompanied the body back and all that, then he went to Vietnam.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Then he at that time, then he went. Now, when Colonel Charles Irving came, the one thing that he really told us about Chalkie was how strong he was. And there is a gun that they, have with them that's broken down, and they carry along, and it weighs about 250 pounds. He said Chalkie could go up hills, down hills, and he wasn't a real big guy. And he just admired his strength, and I think he was really, really taken aback by how strong he was. But, as you said, John, this war was fought by young men from small towns. He was a farmer. He was a volunteer fireman. He spent a lot of time on his riverbank. They were strong, and I think, they also, farm guys are different. They have a sense of responsibility, like, at this time of the year, we got to get that tobacco in. We got to get it out. We got to get it in. I mean, they're very, very dedicated, and I think that also caused him to. I just wonder in that moment, Senator, when he decided to make that decision, there's the grenade. I wonder if it goes through your mind. Now, a grenade is going to explode. I wonder if he thought, I'm going to save him, or he just reacted, or it just makes you wonder what was his thoughts in that last minute of valor, that last second. Because, we can talk this through, but action takes just seconds. I wonder if he realized, I'm gone.
I've wondered the same thing, Lana, and I don't know. Of course, no one knows except for the Lord. But he was a tough guy, and when I say tough, I mean that in a complimentary way. And the other thing, when I went around and talked to the neighbors in Petersburg, was his sense of respect for adults, people older than him. He went around to all the people in his neighborhood down there in Petersburg and said goodbye to all the elderly people. And he must have had a premonition that about his death, because he told several of them, said that he might not be back. And but he went around, especially to the older people in the community, and said goodbye to them when he left. And the other thing I think about, I'm blessed. I come from a close-knit family myself.
And a large family.
A large family, I do. And I remember how homesick I was just when I left for college.
I know.
Just when I left for college. Can you imagine, and I was older than, well, I was about the same age actually, but can you imagine being, your whole life being Petersburg, Kentucky, and then being shipped over to Vietnam, a totally different culture, dropped in the middle of a controversial war, and being away from your parents and everything that was familiar to you, and having the stress of war all at the same time.
Just like that, just,
And he was there for a year, almost a year, when he was killed. It wasn't like that he was coming home all the time on weekends or anything.
No.
This was a tough situation.
Yes, it was. Now, I asked Ron, Senator, what he thought Chalkie would think of the dedication and the memorial service, and he said Chalkie would probably say something like, what's all this fuss about? Because, as it's the quiet man, the reserved, humble guy, so many times, Senator, that does these acts of valor. The big blow-off guy, the guy that's, he's so tough, many times they fold, collapse.
Right.
But it's this inner strength, like you said. He really was just a great guy all the way around. I think his company loved him. I mean, everyone just talked so positive about Chalkie Fleek. What a guy he was. Well, Senator, I have some pictures because we've talked about him. You know what he did, and I want you to see him. Now, this is a picture of Chalkie, and he's wearing his medal, Senator, but of course he never got to wear his medal in reality. This is a portrait by Mary Amanda Moore. Many people from our Boone County know her. She's a renowned artist here, and in this rendering she has put the Medal of Honor around his neck. But this is Chalkie, like in his fatigues, wearing his medal.
Well, and just to tell you a little bit more about this painting, Lana, when I was down at the Petersburg Fire Department with the chief down there, we were in his office, and I looked down and I saw part of a painting coming out from the side of a file cabinet. And for some reason, I reached down and pulled it out. And it was the original oil painting that the artist had done. And the chief said, "Oh my goodness," he said, "we were remodeling and that had been up, and we put it away. Put it away, and it was never put back up." And that was what was the artist's name?
Mary Amanda Moore.
Yeah, Mary, and I want to say a word about her too, Mary Amanda Moore, because as you say, she was a renowned artist and painted a lot of the in the Baptist
courthouse,
in the
churches.
Baptist church. A lot of the baptistries have her paintings in around Boone County, and she's gone now, I believe.
Yes, she is.
But a lot of her family is still around, and that was the painting that she did of him. And I think it's kind of unique. You don't see too many paintings like that where the way he's dressed, and and that's the painting that's really the picture that has been most we've seen most in the media. Yeah.
And they had a lot of pictures at the dedication. If you've never seen a Medal of Honor, which who has, but as Senator said, it's encased at our Boone County Courthouse, and this is what it looks like. There have only, now think of this, all of our wars, starting with the Civil War, World War I, II, Vietnam, Korea, Afghanistan, Iran, if I forgot any, forgive me. But through all of our wars, I think it's 3,000. You had the figure 520 of all wars.
Right, and
I mean,
and the only one in the history of the country from Boone County, and it's some controversy, but from what the historians from Northern Kentucky tell me, probably there's only two. He's one of two from Northern Kentucky in the history of the country.
Wow.
And there's also, I want to share with you, Lana, That's the original, and that's at the Boone County Courthouse encased in the lobby. There's also a duplicate of it at the Florence City Building, and they also have a great display of the first time I had ever seen a picture was when I went to look at the display at the Florence City Building, where they actually have the photograph of President Nixon presenting the medal to Mom and Dad and the brothers and sisters, and that's on display at the Florence City Building. And the other thing that's on display at the Florence City Building, for those of you who are interested, is the pin that the Medal of Honor document was signed with. So, they have a great display also.
That is great memories. Now, as he just said, now President Nixon, of course, awarded the Medal of Honor to Wilford and Catherine.
And they went to Washington, along with baby Carla and the two other sons, Sonny and Wayne, all three were there, yeah.
Yes, but now, then 10 years later, they rededicated it, and this is the rededication at Burlington Courthouse, I assume, and there is Sonny. He's got the glasses on. There's Mrs. Catherine Fleek, and there's Wilford presenting it to a member of the armed forces, which I imagine that's protocol, and then, of course, it became encased at our courthouse in Burlington. So there they are with that. Now, here's what well, this part here is a lot, I guess, Gary Moore.
Gary, and we thank Judge Executive Gary Moore and the entire Boone County Fiscal Court. They were the ones that were responsible for this.
This is our Petersburg, welcome to Petersburg, home of Sgt.Charles Chalkie Fleek, Congressional Medal Honor recipient. What an honor. And I'm sure his family is pleased, oh, so pleased. Great honor. Now, here is Senator Schickel's part in naming a part of Kentucky 20. Am I right, Senator?
Yeah, the part that goes through Petersburg, there's two of those signs, one when you come into Petersburg and another one, from both sides that designate that the Charles Chalkie Fleek Memorial Highway.
What a great honor. I'm so glad you took this upon yourself. I just have a few more. This one has a flashback. This was at our dedication, and it's got a flashback. So I tried to color that out, but as Senator said earlier, this is a field camp in Vietnam. And as he talked about, leaving Little River Town, Petersburg, Kentucky, you're 18 years old, and you're thrown, look at this, I mean, it's just pretty bleak looking. And of course, I guess they went on their patrols, from this camp. So I hope you can see just the guys are all meandering around working.
It's very hot, a lot of rain.
Very hot, isn't that the truth? Very tropical, very unused to that atmosphere. Now here we're at the Petersburg Cemetery. I wish everybody in Boone County could have been there. It was really a great dedication for Chalkie.
And if you've never been to the Petersburg Cemetery, you need to go visit. It's a beautiful place.
It is a beautiful cemetery. Gary Greiser led the prayer. Gary's always so helpful. He led the prayer. He sang a hymn, and just a beautiful, beautiful service. And of course, we had the 21-gun salute. Senator, and here are our armed forces ready to salute Chalkie.
And and that is the American the Florence or Boone County American Legion Honor Guard, Post 4, and it's kind of interesting because I've gotten to know the men at Post 4 very well. They've been keeping this gravesite up for years and years, decorating it on Memorial Day, keeping it up. And when we first started planning this, they agreed to be the color guard. Well, after it started to get some publicity, I got calls from Washington, D.C. that the Army would be happy to send in their professional color guard, and so we really wrestled what to do. And we decided we were just going to keep it with the local American Legion post because Chalkie was such a working guy. You could just picture him being one of those guys that he
great
lived.
decision.
Yeah. So that's what we did.
And right here.
And they did a great job.
Yes, they did. One more. Let's see. This also was at the cemetery, and I just thought it was great because it's just our flags, and it's on the back of I think a motorcycle, and just a great, great picture. and it just, you know, that's one of the first things I saw as I photographed. So there's the flags just coming into Petersburg Cemetery, which is beautiful. And our last picture that we'll show is of Chalkie's grave. So Charles Clinton Fleek, and he was born August 28th of 47, and he died May 27th of 1969. He was 21 years old.
One of the things we're talking about, as you can see, it's a very humble gravestone. And we're talking about possibly putting a larger stone monument there. But we'll see. You know, Chalkie was such a humble person. There's a certain beauty in the simplicity
yes,
of the smaller stone, too.
I
but
agree.
one thing that came out for me at this memorial, and this first time I've seen some of these pictures, thank you for taking them, Lana, is the outpouring of people from country people.
Yes.
That just came to that spontaneously.
Yes, it was a beautiful ceremony. And Senator, we're about out of time. Is there anything that you would like to add? You did a great job. Thank you for all your work on getting the highway dedicated to him. It's so important that we have someone in our county that did this amazing feat to honor him forever.
As I get older, Lena, one of the things I enjoy in my job as state senator is looking into some of these great things that have happened in the past and giving them their due honor. And so this was really, for me, I don't want to say a fun project, but in a way, it was a very satisfying project for me because to see whose shoulders we stand on and to see the great things that I think are you a native Boone County?
Yes.
Yeah, well, see, you're a native Boone County, and I love being around native Boone County.
Yes.
I'm not, but I had enough sense to get here as soon as I knew where it was.
You knew, and to stay.
Yeah, but there's, you know, most people in Boone County are not native. There's probably 20% of the population's native, so I love talking to and there was a lot of native Boone Countyans at this service.
Yes, there were. Well, with this, you know, we've been talking today with Senator John Schickel. I'm so glad he was with us. And I want to leave you. This was on the program, and we don't have to see a picture of this, but I'm going to read it. It was at the end of the program on the dedication to Charles Chalkie Fleek. Poor is the nation that has no heroes. Shameful is the one that having them forgets. So when we say thank a veteran, don't let that become a cliche. I mean, when you thank a veteran, do it from the bottom of your heart, because without them, and they all did their part, maybe not as far as Chalkie Fleek, but everyone had a part, and without them, we would not be able to enjoy this great country of ours, our freedom and our liberty. So always remember, if you run into a veteran, thank them. Thank you again, Senator.
Thank you. And there's one name I do want to mention too. Audrey Whalen was a big part of this, and I failed to mention her earlier, and her enthusiasm. But it was a great thing, and thank you for your part in it.
And thank you for joining us today. As always, I hope you learned a lot about Charles Clinton, Chalkie Fleek, and until next time, be happy, keep smiling, and I'll see you soon.